Keanu Reeves is more than an actor. He is the legend of legends, a priceless treasure of Hollywood, a gift the world may never see again. He is not only Neo, the savior who bent reality in the Matrix, nor just John Wick, the Avenger who carved vengeance into myth. He is the living heartbeat of cinema, a silent storm who has given body, soul, and kindness to generations of audiences. In an industry overflowing with ego and illusion, Keanu stands apart. To many, he feels less like a celebrity and more like an angel walking among us. Compassionate, humble, strikingly handsome, yet so much more. Keanu is living proof that perhaps there truly is one man loved by the entire world. And yet, behind the undying glory and the smile that has soothed millions, lie wounds that never fully heal. Cold nights, haunting shadows, and memories that claw at his soul piece by piece. The man who once seemed unbreakable still battles through the darkest chapters of life. Pain refuses to release him, while new struggles to his health grow heavier. What he endures now may be the deepest trial of all. The first wounds of Keanu Reeves were not written by fame, but by childhood itself. A father who disappeared, a mother searching for stability through broken marriages, siblings scattered across the branches of a fractured family tree, and a boy who learned far too early that love could vanish in a single breath. If you believe Keanu Reeves is not only an actor but a legend of compassion, let your like shine and drop a heart in the comments as an eternal tribute to Hollywood's rarest treasure. Keanu Charles Reeves was born on September 2nd, 1964, in Beirut, Lebanon. Even his name carried poetry. Keanu in Hawaiian means cool breeze over the mountains, yet the beauty of that name was quickly overshadowed by turbulence. His father, Samuel Nolan Reeves Jr., a Hawaiian geologist of mixed ancestry, and his mother, Patricia Taylor, an English costume designer, were already drifting apart when he was born. Within 2 years, the marriage collapsed, leaving Keanu's earliest memories etched not in comfort, but in absence. His father's presence loomed larger by disappearing. At 2, he was gone. At 13, Keanu saw him for the last time on Hawaiian soil. A farewell without words, a silence that would never be broken. It was as if he vanished into silence, Reeves later recalled. Decades afterward, he admitted, "We believed our lives would be better if we had our father with us." But no return ever came. Patricia bore the weight of survival alone, moving the family from Beirut to Sydney, then to New York, and finally to Toronto. At each stop, she sought stability in new marriages, but each fractured in turn. The children grew up with a carousel of stepfathers who never stayed long enough to be remembered as family. Out of this instability came half-sisters and step-siblings, but only Kim, his younger sister, shared both parents, and the storms of their childhood. To Keanu, Kim was not just a sibling, but proof that family could mean something more than a passing word. For the Reeves children, childhood meant half-packed suitcases, walls that never stayed familiar, and birthdays celebrated in cities that blurred together. Home was never sanctuary, only pause before the next upheaval. School gave no relief either. Over 5 years, Keanu cycled through 4 high schools, struggling to adapt. Dyslexia turned every classroom into a battlefield. Letters refused to stay still on the page while classmates surged ahead. Teachers often mistook his restless energy for defiance. One principal expelled him outright for asking too many questions. "I questioned everything too much," Reeves later admitted. "I couldn't help it, even if it got me into trouble." Labeled a difficult student, he was in truth only a boy desperate to understand a world that kept shifting beneath his feet. Amid the chaos, one sanctuary emerged: the ice rink. As a goalkeeper, Keanu was known as the Wall, his reflexes and resilience earning him respect. Behind the mask, he found belonging, a rare identity he could truly claim. He dreamed of the Ontario Hockey League, even of skating beneath Canada's flag at the Olympics. For a boy without a lasting home, hockey was more than sport. It was proof that he could be unbreakable. Then came the cruel twist. At just 15, when most teenagers were still dreaming freely of the future, A devastating injury ended his hockey career in an instant. The dream that had been his only anchor vanished, leaving him sidelined while others chased the life he had imagined. Once again, he was taught how fragile stability could be. By the end of his teens, Keanu had endured what might shatter many adults. The silence of an absent father, the instability of broken homes, the sting of classrooms that left him behind, the ache of fractured family bonds, and the heartbreak of watching his greatest dream vanish on the ice. It was a brutal apprenticeship in grief. And yet these wounds did not harden him into bitterness. They forged him. An absent father gave him empathy for the abandoned. A carousel of stepfathers taught him that trust must be earned. Dyslexia instilled patience with imperfection. And the injury that ended hockey nudged him toward the stage, opening the door to the destiny that would one day make him a legend. Looking back, Reeves reflected, "Grief changes shape, but it never ends." In that truth lies the echo of a boy who first tasted loss long before Hollywood's spotlight found him. His childhood was not simply a prelude to greatness. It was the furnace where pain and perseverance collided, melting into the quiet strength, humility, and resilience that would one day make the world fall in love with Keanu Reeves. When the roar of the hockey rink was stolen from him at 15, Keanu did not surrender to silence. Instead, the stage began to whisper. A boy who had lost so much discovered that stories could become his refuge. What he did not yet know was that this new dream would demand not only talent, but the same hunger and endurance that had already defined his young life. By the time he left school, branded a misfit, he had already chosen performance as salvation. Dyslexia turned every script into a battlefield, but the camera never demanded speed. It demanded truth. He scraped together odd jobs in small Canadian TV shows. He gulped soda in a Coca-Cola commercial with the desperation of an underdog proving he belonged. He even hosted a children's program where his awkward charm somehow won over young viewers. These were not glamorous beginnings, but survival wages for a boy who had already made survival his second skin. Armed with little more than a battered Volvo, a suitcase, and a name most couldn't pronounce, Keanu drove into Los Angeles chasing a fragile hope. He rented bare apartments, stretched every dollar until cupboards stood empty, and knocked on doors that rarely opened. Casting agents studied him with puzzled eyes, unsure if he was leading man or drifter. In a city that devoured dreamers by the thousands, Hollywood's gates were heavy, and Keanu had only his bare hands. Then, a flicker of recognition. A bleak indie film, River's Edge, revealed a soul wrestling with shadows far deeper than the industry had expected. Soon after, Permanent Record cast him as a young man mourning a friend's death, and critics began to murmur that his performances carried a weight too raw to be manufactured. They were right. The grief on screen was a mirror of the losses he had carried all along. In this fragile window, he also crossed paths with River Phoenix, a kindred spirit who shared his hunger for truth in art. Their bond gave Keanu for the first time a sense of belonging in an industry that had mostly greeted him with doubt. But fate, merciless as ever, was already waiting for them both. Just as he reached for roles of depth, destiny played another cruel trick. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure turned him into a cultural phenomenon beloved by millions as the goofy time-traveling Ted. But what felt like a joyful reprieve quickly became a cage. The Airhead label clung to him as if Hollywood had decided he was too light for darkness, too simple for tragedy. Years later, he admitted, "I craved something lighthearted." But that label stayed with me for years. Even triumph had teeth, and every cheer carried its shadow. These beginnings were never triumph without cost. Each success echoed with the ghosts of his past. The boy expelled for asking too many questions, now dismissed for wanting too much depth. The teenager whose dream on the ice was stolen, now chasing another dream under unforgiving lights. Fame was on the horizon, but it came not as a gift. It came as another uphill climb. And yet in those lean years, in the rejections, the cheap apartments, the endless auditions, Keanu was quietly proving something greater than stardom. He was building endurance. The same resilience that had carried him through absent fathers, fractured homes, and empty cupboards was now carrying him through Hollywood's fickle gates. The boy who once packed and unpacked suitcases for every new city had learned to carry his true home inside himself. Persistence, humility, and a refusal to quit. The world had not yet crowned him a legend, but he had already revealed the truth that mattered most. He would not break. Keanu Reeves entered the 1990s not as Hollywood's golden child, but as its quiet outsider. Tall, restless, carrying more scars than connections. Yet, the screen quickly revealed what others had overlooked. In Point Break, he wasn't simply an action hero chasing waves. He was a man who could lace adrenaline with sincerity. It was the first glimpse of his paradox. Danger and depth bound together as if every punch carried both muscle and melancholy. The tide had shifted and the world began to take notice. That tide surged with speed. The bus exploded. The world cheered. Sandra Bullock by his side. And overnight, Keanu was vaulted into the stratosphere. Yet, when the studio waved a fortune for a sequel, he chose the harder road. He refused to trade integrity for repetition. That single no was a line drawn in blood, proof that his career would not be built on shortcuts, but on principle. Hollywood, in its unforgiving way, made him pay. Labels like reckless and unwise clung to him, sharp as glass, but Keanu bore them in silence. As if to test him further, the mid-9s became another crucible. Johnny, mnemonic, and chain reaction faltered. Critics circled like vultures, and whispers spread. Maybe he was just a pretty face, hollow beneath the eyes. But then my own private Idaho changed everything. Beside River Phoenix, his closest friend and spiritual brother, Keanu, bared a raw intimacy that no critic could deny. River was the family he had never known. Wild, tender, broken in ways that mirrored his own. Their friendship was sanctuary, a fragile refuge in an industry built on masks. For a time, it seemed Keanu had found a light strong enough to quiet the shadows that had haunted him since childhood. Yet, beyond that fragile light, fate was already sharpening its blade. And then, in 1999, the storm broke. The Matrix demanded everything. To become Neo, Keanu turned his body into a battlefield. Weeks of martial arts left his muscles screaming. Wire work twisted his frame until every joint begged for mercy, and a neck injury forced him to strap into braces while still learning to fight. He bent reality on screen, but off-screen he bent himself into agony. For audiences, Neo was a revelation. For Keanu, it was destiny written in blood and pain. Success carved directly into his bones. But applause is fickle. When the credits faded, the old doubts crept back. Wooden, limited, lucky. The same words that once haunted him in classrooms now echoed through headlines. Misunderstood, mislabeled, mocked, and Keanu climbed anyway. Each insult another stone on the mountain he refused to stop climbing. Then came resurrection. In 2014, when many of his peers were fading into cameos, John Wick struck like lightning. What began as a revenge thriller became myth. Keanu trained with brutal devotion. Days on shooting ranges, nights behind the wheel, weeks of choreography so punishing that bruises turned his body into a living map of sacrifice. His aging knees screamed, yet he refused to hand the work to doubles. Wong-Kreen, John Wick was a man surviving grief. Off-screen, Keanu was a man surviving the toll of giving everything. By Chapter 4, the franchise had crowned him not just as a star reborn, but as a warrior carved from endurance itself. For Keanu Reeves, glory has never been gentle. Every triumph left a scar. Every standing ovation hid hours of suffering. The world saw Neo dodging bullets and John Wick dismantling armies. But behind the curtain was a man whose body bore the cost of every cheer, whose heart carried losses no role could erase. And just as he stood highest, the shadows of private tragedy were waiting, ready to remind him that even the brightest fame could never outshine grief. Keanu Reeves has always been described as a man of mystery, and nowhere is that more true than in the story of his heart. His romantic life was never the glittering carousel of red carpets that Hollywood adores. Instead, it was a path littered with tender beginnings, whispered longings, and heartbreaks that would one day carve scars deeper than applause could ever heal. His first true romance came in the late 1980s when he met actress Jill Shulen on the set of Babes in Toyland. For 3 fleeting years, they clung to each other like young dreamers, scribbling futures in the sky, daring to believe that love could grant them permanence. But Jill's extroverted sparkle collided with Keanu's quiet reserve, and the distance between their rising careers pulled them apart. In 1989, their love unraveled. For Keanu, it was not just the end of a relationship. It was the shattering of his first fragile belief that love could become home. That early heartbreak left an ache that lingered like a bruise on the soul, teaching him a truth that would haunt his years. Love, no matter how radiant, could vanish as easily as smoke in the wind. After Jill, his name drifted through tabloids like a shadow with no anchor. Whispers of Sofia Coppola, fleeting dinners with Diane Keaton, rumors tying him to Claire Forlani, Charlize Theron, Cameron Diaz. Some may have been real, others inventions of a restless press. Yet Keanu himself never indulged the circus. He moved through fame with a deliberate restraint, carrying his heart like a fragile glass, as though he already knew the spotlight could fracture what it touched. Behind every rumor was a silence that spoke louder, a man unwilling to gamble tenderness against spectacle. Among the noise, 2 connections stood apart, too genuine to be dismissed as gossip. Sandra Bullock, his radiant partner in Speed, confessed years later that she had once harbored a crush. Keanu admitted the feeling was mutual, yet both chose to protect what mattered more. They buried the possibility of romance, locking it away before it could be tested, and in doing so created something rarer, a friendship that has endured more than 3 decades. In Sandra, Keanu found laughter that healed, loyalty that asked for nothing, and the bittersweet knowledge that sometimes the purest love is the one that never dares change its name. For audiences, they remain the couple that might have been. For Keanu, Sandra is the proof that not all love stories need the word romance to last a lifetime. Winona Ryder, meanwhile, became something closer to a soul twin. Their bond began in 1992 on the set of Bram Stoker's Dracula, where they enacted a wedding so authentic that Winona still jokes they might, in some inexplicable way, truly be married. What lingered after the folklore was something unspoken yet undeniable. 2 guarded souls who recognized themselves in each other's silence. Together they shared not headlines but trust, not passion, but sanctuary. Their connection was a love without a name. Tender enough to survive decades, haunting enough to leave the world forever, wondering what it might have been. But love would return in a form that felt undeniable. In 1998, at a party for his band Dog Star, Keanu met actress Jennifer Sim. Luminous, tender, with a spirit that mirrored his own quiet ape. Their connection was immediate, profound, as though fate had finally decided to grant him what he had long been denied. Not just affection, but the fragile hope of family. For a man who had grown up packing and unpacking suitcases, who had carried emptiness where a father should have stood, Jennifer was more than romance. She was a promise. Soon they moved in together, creating a modest sanctuary far from cameras, where ordinary moments, cooking, music, late-night laughter felt like treasures he had been chasing all his life. By 1999, Jennifer was pregnant with their first child. For Keanu, it was not simply joy. It was redemption. The dream he had carried since boyhood, of a stable home, of holding a daughter in his arms, of finally mending the fractures of his past, was within reach. He prepared for her arrival with a tenderness that surprised even his closest friends. In Jennifer's eyes, he saw a future that might finally quiet the grief that had followed him since childhood. Then came the cruelty that words can barely hold. On Christmas Eve of 1999, their daughter Ava was stillborn. The nursery they had prepared stood silent, filled not with a baby's cries, but with unbearable quiet. A room transformed into a shrine of absence. The little clothes folded neatly in drawers, The empty crib waiting in vain became daily reminders of a joy denied. Friends recall Keanu's haunted stillness, the way his eyes seemed to carry a weight beyond language. He did not lash out. He did not speak often, but his silence was deafening. The silence of a man whose hope had been torn from him before he could even hold it. The loss struck at the very heart of their love. For a fleeting moment, Keanu had believed he was on the cusp of healing the old wounds that had marked his life. With Jennifer, he had glimpsed the family he had always arched for. But fate, merciless as ever, was not finished with him. What began as a love marked by light had already been claimed by darkness. And just beyond the horizon, an even crueler shadow waited. One that would carve into Keanu Reeves the deepest wound of all. The shadow that had stalked Keanu Reeves since childhood rose again in the cruelest way imaginable. In April 2001, the phone call came. The kind of call that splits a life into before and after. Jennifer Sim, the woman who had been his steady flame, his one glimpse of family and future, was gone. The accident had taken her instantly. Those who stood near him later recalled not a scream, not a collapse, but something far more haunting. Stillness. He froze as though the very air had been torn from his lungs. It was not noise that marked his grief, but silence. A silence so suffocating it seemed to press against the walls and crush the room. For a man who had lived with absence all his life, the universe had now delivered its most merciless confirmation that anyone he dared to love could vanish without warning, leaving only shadows where light had been. The days that followed were not days at all, but a waking nightmare. Reporters assembled and lenses waited, but what they recorded was not Neo, not John Wick, not the global face projected on 1,000 screens. They saw only a man hollowed by loss, stripped of the armor that fame once supplied. At the funeral, Keanu shouldered Jennifer's coffin, head bowed, eyes downcast, his restraint more devastating than any display of tears. With each step, he seemed to carry not only the weight of wood and flowers, but the unbearable truth that half his heart was being lowered into the earth. Flashbulbs trapped his outline, but not the silence that swallowed him whole. They could not capture how he lingered after everyone else had drifted away. Hands clenched, shoulders slightly caved, he stood as if time might stop obeying its own laws if he willed it hard enough. The figure that remained beside her grave looked carved from sorrow, fixed between goodbye and refusal. Those who knew him said his grief was bottomless, yet it rarely broke the surface. It lived in his eyes, where vacancy shadowed tenderness, and in the pauses that began to punctuate his voice. He returned to sets, scripts, marks taped on studio floors, but nothing inside him was unchanged. On screen, he bent bullets, rose from impossible battles, and survived against all odds. Off-screen, he lived with a truth no role could rewrite. In the one battle that mattered most, he had been powerless. "Grief changes shape, but it never ends," he would say later. In those words lived not a slogan, but a confession and a map. For Keanu, grief was not a storm that passed. It was a companion that never left. It reshaped itself into quiet, into distance, into the haunted calm audiences mistook for mystery. Jennifer's death was not another sad line in a long biography. It was the cruelest chapter in a book already stained with loss. It carved a final lesson into him. Love, no matter how radiant, can be stolen in an instant. Yet the same truth that hollowed him also refined him. Out of the wound grew a gentleness the world came to recognize. Jennifer's absence folded into his presence, into the patience offered to strangers, the courtesy to colleagues, the kindness extended without fanfare. In carrying her loss, Keanu became more than a star. He became a vessel for compassion. Life had never been gentle with him, and it would not soften now. Fate's next cruelty arrived not as a crash, but as erosion. His younger sister, Kim Reeves, only 2 years his junior, was diagnosed with leukemia, and his life became a pendulum. He moved between the blinding lights of premieres and the sterile corridors of hospitals, between red carpets and the hum of fluorescent ceilings. On screen, he defied destiny. Off-screen, he sat in a thin chair reading through the night, his hand clasped around hers while chemotherapy drained her strength. Fans screamed his name outside. He whispered hers in prayers only the vents could hear. The contrast was a fracture no applause could mend. Friends remember the small, stubborn mercies that revealed the depth of his devotion. He bought a home near Los Angeles so Kim would never feel far from him. He rearranged shooting schedules, turned down roles without explanation, and boarded last-minute flights back to Toronto just to sit by her bed. In those rooms, he was not a legend. He was a brother. Fragile, exhausted, unyielding in love. After long years of treatment, Kim reached remission, and the world called it victory. But the scars of that vigil never healed. He already knew the agony of sudden loss. An accident, a stillborn child, futures erased in an instant. This was grief in its slowest form, watching someone you love suffer while money, fame, and devotion fail to stop the pain. That helplessness etched itself deep, leaving a mark no ovation could touch. From that crucible grew a quiet legacy few ever saw. Without speeches or spotlights, he helped fund a foundation supporting children's hospitals and cancer research. He gave without attaching his name, not for credit but in gratitude. Thank you to every nurse and doctor who steadied Kim's nights, and a promise to spare other families the same helplessness. Her illness became another chapter in the hard book he had been compelled to read since childhood. Life had taken a father, a child, and the woman he loved. With Kim, he proved that love can be patient, steady, stubborn enough to outlast fear. Those invisible nights in hospital corridors shaped him as surely as any role he ever played. Some wounds do not creep. They strike in a single night and split the world before you can breathe. In October 1993, the call came. River Phoenix, his closest friend and chosen brother, had collapsed outside the Viper Room and would not rise again. River was 23, brilliant, restless, a prodigy undone by a fatal mix that stole his breath and his future. For Hollywood, it was the loss of a star. For Keanu, it was the theft of his other half. On my own private Idaho, they had shed their masks. Two boys from broken homes finding recognition in each other's silence. River was fire, dazzling and untamed. Keanu was stone, steady and quietly protective. Together they made a balance that felt unbreakable until it shattered overnight. Those close to him say Keanu did not erupt when the news arrived. He folded into a terrible stillness. Later, he admitted the tears came alone, in hours no one could witness. In front of cameras he spoke little, not out of denial but because silence was the only armor he had left. The pain was too sacred to display, so he buried it and carried it forward like a ghost that followed him from set to set. The loss carved into every role he took afterward. When critics praised the depth of sorrow in his performances, they were witnessing more than acting. They were seeing River's absence channeled through him, the shadow behind his eyes, the quiet pauses, the way his characters seemed to know that joy is always fragile. Every triumph of his career in the years that followed was haunted by the silence of a friend who should have been there to share it. And yet, River's death was not only a personal tragedy, it became a cautionary tale. And it was the reminder that talent, youth, and brilliance are not shields against life's cruelties, that even the brightest flames can be extinguished if we mistake recklessness for freedom. Keanu never turned that lesson into sermons, but he embodied it, living with humility, shunning excess, showing gratitude for the simple gift of being alive. Grief changes shape, but it never ends. He would later say in the silence left by River, those words became prophecy. River's passing was not just the end of a friendship. It was the permanent theft of a brotherhood that had once lit his world. And though the scar never closed, it shaped Keanu into the man the world now reveres. Proof that the deepest wounds, born quietly and with dignity, can transform pain into compassion and loss into a legacy that outlives the fallen. The body, like the heart, has limits, and for Keanu Reeves, every film has carved those limits deeper until pain itself became his most unrelenting companion. The applause faded, the lights dimmed, but the toll remained, etched into him like scars on stone. The world worshipped the myth of the indestructible warrior. What it never saw was the man limping into the shadows after the cameras cut, carrying pain stitched into his very frame. Silence masking the torment of a body pushed beyond forgiveness. It began with The Matrix, when Hollywood demanded not just performance but transformation. For months, he surrendered himself to martial arts drills so merciless that he staggered out trembling, drenched in sweat, muscles shaking from exhaustion. The wire work twisted his frame. The choreography bruised his skin until finally came the cruelest blow. A spinal injury so grave that doctors warned paralysis was a possibility. Surgeons performed delicate neck surgery, fusing vertebrae and stabilizing his spine with precision. Most would have surrendered. Keanu did not. Before the scars had even healed, still strapped in a brace, he returned to training. On screen, Neo bent bullets and defied physics. Off-screen, Keanu bent himself into relentless pain, each move a defiance against the limits threatening to consume him. "I never wanted to let the audience down," he would confess, words that carried the quiet weight of a vow sealed in suffering. But cinema is merciless, and the cost only climbed. When John Wick arrived, he refused to hide behind doubles. He drilled live-fire training until his fingertips blistered. He threw his body into judo slams and jiu-jitsu locks until his shoulders ached with fire. He rehearsed gun-fu sequences with such obsession that his knuckles stiffened and swelled. Nights were spent on racetracks, spinning cars at blistering speeds, the violence of the drift rattling his body to the core. By Chapter 4, the price had been carved visibly into his stride. Knees worn down by years of punishing impacts, tendons stiff as steel pulled too tight, every landing sending shocks through joints long past their prime. Fans marveled at his precision. Doctors would have marveled simply that he could still walk at all. And through it all, Keanu never allowed complaint to leave his lips. No headlines of protest, no indulgence in self-pity, only discipline, only the silent agreement that his body would falter before his promise to the audience ever did. The man who seemed untouchable on screen was, in truth, a man who had chosen to pay for every frame with his own strength. His legend was not built on invincibility. It was built on endurance. Then, in his 6th decade, came the cruel reminder that no body can defy time. It happened on the set of Good Fortune during what should have been a simple cold immersion scene. One slip, one wrong angle, and his knee gave way with a sound he later described as like a potato chip breaking. It was more than a crack in the joint. It was the sound of time itself, breaking into his silence. For days, he walked in immobilization, forcing himself through therapy, willing his body forward so the cameras could keep rolling. The injury was not life-threatening, but it was symbolic. The clearest sign yet that even the strongest walls eventually reveal their fractures. "My heart wants to keep going," he admitted quietly, "but I'm not sure my knees agree." What breaks the heart is not the injury itself, but the way Keanu meets it. He does not curse his body or rage against age. Instead, he listens. He adapts. He trades the punishing iron discipline of the gym for gentler rituals. Long swims, quiet walks at dusk, stretches performed with the patience of prayer. He treats recovery as ceremony, a way of honoring the body that has carried him through storms. It is humility in its purest form, to bow to limits without surrendering spirit, to accept fragility and still rise each morning with discipline intact. Fans who have seen him step onto a stage in recent years notice the subtle limp, the careful way he lowers himself into a chair, the fleeting wince he hides behind a smile. These are not signs of weakness, but living proof that every triumph has been bought with sacrifice. To audiences, his characters remain bulletproof. Neo dodging bullets, John Wick dismantling armies. But if you look closer, the truth whispers through every slowed step, every pause between movements, every breath that seems to carry weight. Keanu Reeves has paid for every frame with flesh. Each ovation has cost him nights in ice baths, mornings where pain lingered in every joint, whispered prayers that his body would hold long enough for one more scene. Glory for him has never been free. It has been bought moment by moment with scars carved into muscle and bone. And still he carries it. Just as he has carried grief, he carries pain quietly without complaint. Never as spectacle, but always as choice. His silence is not emptiness, but resilience. The calm of a man who refuses to let suffering define him. At 61, his health bears the undeniable marks of time and sacrifice. Knees worn, tendons stiff, strength tested, and yet those very marks are what make him extraordinary. They are not the end of his legend, but the proof of it. For fans, this truth is both devastating and uplifting. To watch him now is to see not just an actor, but a warrior of endurance. A man who has turned frailty into strength, scars into symbols, and every painful step into proof of what it means to give everything for art. Each limp, each scar, each weary breath is not a weakness. It is a monument to devotion, to resilience, to the unyielding spirit of Keanu Reeves. Now, having just crossed his 61st birthday, Keanu Reeves no longer seeks the roar of stadiums or the glitter of premieres to measure his worth. The man who once bent reality as Neo and fought through armies as John Wick has carved out a different kind of stage, one without cameras, applause, or scripts. His sanctuary lies high above the restless sprawl of Los Angeles. There, in a house perched quietly in the folds of the Hollywood Hills, he finds peace. It is not the kind of home that shouts for attention. Purchased in the early 2000s after decades of drifting through hotels and rented apartments, the property measures more than 5,600 square feet on less than half an acre of land. Yet to call it a mansion would miss the point entirely. Its walls of glass open wide to the horizon, letting morning light spill across shaded patios and into rooms designed not for spectacle, but for peace. A koi pond glimmers in the courtyard. A lap pool stretches narrow and long, its edge dissolving into the skyline, inviting not performance but therapy. There are verandas where twilight lingers like an old friend and gardens where silence gathers as if it has been waiting for him all his life. The architecture, originally built in the late 1980s for an art collector, mirrors Keanu's values. Modernist yet warm, minimalist yet alive with natural light. One wing dissolves the boundary between indoors and out. At the entryway, black panels do not declare grandeur. They whisper restraint. Friends who have visited say the home feels less like a celebrity estate and more like a temple of calm. A place where grief can soften, where the body can breathe, where the soul can recover. But the sanctuary has not always been untouched. In 2014, two intrusions shattered its stillness, forcing Keanu to strengthen security with quiet layers of technology. Even so, the house was never designed to wall the world out. It was designed to hold his heart steady within. For a man whose net worth is estimated at several $100 million, the house is not a monument to wealth. It is a vessel of healing, proof that money in his hands is not for grandeur but for shelter. Here he shares life with Alexandra Grant, the visual artist who has been his partner in recent years. Their story began not with paparazzi flashbulbs, but with collaboration, a book project of poetry and images that grew into friendship and later into love. In 2019, their appearance together at a public gala surprised the world, less because Keanu was in love than because he had chosen at last to let that love be seen. At home, their days unfold in rhythms of quiet companionship, cooking together, hosting a few close friends, walking through art galleries, or reading side by side. She paints, he reads. Sometimes they sit in silence, letting the koi ripple through the pond as evening folds itself around the house. There are no parades, no grand declarations, only a steady pulse of intimacy, the kind that allows both of them to keep their souls intact in a world that devours privacy. This house, more than any set, is where the man behind the myth resides. After decades of loss, sacrifice, and the merciless demands of Hollywood, it is here that he has found the closest thing to rest. The glass walls catch the morning sun not as trophies, but as reminders. Even after the darkest nights, light returns. The koi pond is not ornament, but symbol, renewal, gliding just beneath the surface. The lap pool is not for display, but for discipline, a ritual that keeps him moving slowly, gently, on his own terms. Every corner of the space whispers the same truth. Glory fades, but peace endures. And yet peace does not mean stillness. Keanu continues to work, though never on Hollywood's schedule. The future of the John Wick saga remains uncertain. He has left the door ajar for a 5th installment, but only if his body can endure the punishment. His cameo in Ballerina is complete, a passing of the torch within that universe. Beyond action, he stretches into new ground. Good Fortune, a comedy drama directed by Azel Jacobs, signals his willingness to explore lighter registers. But even here, fate reminded him of fragility. During filming, he slipped while preparing for a cold immersion scene, and his knee gave way with a crack he compared to a potato chip breaking. It was not life-threatening, but symbolic. The clearest reminder yet that even legends cannot outrun age. He has since recovered, but with the humility to acknowledge what his body tells him. My heart wants to keep going, but I'm not sure my knees agree. Music, too, has returned. His band, Dog Star, dormant for decades, has been revived. They perform, they record, they travel, not to stadiums of tens of thousands, but to intimate venues where the bass hums quietly beneath the melody. For Keanu, standing on stage with a guitar is not about fame, but about rediscovering joy that predates Hollywood itself. He has also ventured into graphic novels and poetry, choosing projects not for market calculation, but for resonance. "I only want to do what makes my heart beat faster," he has said. At this stage, he has earned the right to follow only that compass. And what of the man himself? The health, the habits, the body now 61 years old. He carries no chronic illness publicly known, but his frame tells its own story. Decades of stunts, collisions, rehearsals have carved themselves into his knees, his shoulders, his spine. He trains intensely when projects demand it. Long hours of strength, stamina, and technique. But when cameras stop rolling, he shifts into gentler cycles, swimming, walking, stretching. Therapy's not to break, but to heal. His discipline is visible, but it is no longer obsession. It is stewardship, the careful tending of a body that has carried him farther than he once thought possible. His appearance is its own parable. The hair, long and dark, streaked with silver. The beard, salt and pepper. The frame, lean but firm. The posture slowed slightly by years of impact, yet carrying quiet dignity. He is not the Keanu of 1999, but he is perhaps something rarer. A man who wears time honestly, without disguise, without vanity. A man who has turned age itself into grace. In public, his presence is measured. He attends premieres, supports Alexandra at art openings, fulfills obligations, but avoids the endless stage of social media. Each appearance feels deliberate, not habitual. In an age when celebrity often means constant exposure, Keanu chooses invisibility as a kind of wisdom. Beyond cinema, his legacy glows brightest, not in records but in gestures. He has quietly funded hospitals and cancer research through a private foundation that bears no name. He has given gifts to stunt teams, motorcycles, profit shares as tokens of gratitude. He has been spotted talking with unhoused neighbors, helping strangers stranded on the roadside, offering his subway seat without ceremony. These are not staged for cameras. They are the ordinary outpourings of a man who has carried grief and chosen again and again to transmute it into kindness. This is the alchemy of Keanu Reeves, to turn loss into empathy, to transform silence into presence. His philosophy is not written in manifestos, but in his choices. Grief, he once said, changes shape but never ends. Instead of hiding from that truth, he has allowed it to soften him, to make him gentler, more generous. Hollywood has known stars brighter, louder, wealthier. Few, however, have carried sorrow with such humility and turned it into a force that uplifts others. Perhaps that is the truest definition of greatness. Not how high one climbs, but how gently one stands when the climb is over. For Keanu Reeves, the legend is not only in the bullets dodged or the armies defeated. It is in the way he opens a door for a stranger. In the way he laughs quietly with friends, in the way he sits by a koi pond and remembers with gratitude that light always returns after night. He has given everything to art, and at last he has given himself permission to heal. In the end, Keanu Reeves' story is not only the story of an actor, but of a man who has lived through storms and chosen to walk gently through what remained. He has shown us that greatness is not measured in fortune or fame, but in the quiet choices. The choice to be kind when no one is watching. The choice to endure without bitterness. The choice to turn wounds into wisdom and scars into compassion. Perhaps that is why audiences across generations feel so deeply connected to him. Because in Keanu, we see something of ourselves, our own grief, our own search for meaning, our own longing for peace after chaos. His home in the hills may be his sanctuary, but the lesson it holds belongs to us all. That even after the darkest nights, the morning light will always return. And now the question belongs to you. Would you want to see Keanu Reeves step once more into the suit of John Wick? Or do you hope he chooses to slow down to protect the health that has already carried so much? Has his quiet philosophy. That grief changes shape, but it never ends. Ever touched your own life? Perhaps reminding you of someone you loved and lost. If his journey has spoken to you, leave your reflections below. Share a memory, a thought, a wish for the man who has given us so much. And if you believe, as we do, that stories like his should be remembered, cherished, and passed on, subscribe and join us in honoring lives that prove resilience and kindness can shine brighter than fame itself.